words, James. I hope I can live up to the reputation you just set. So anyways, I will talk a little bit about our business and give a little bit of story as well, who we are and where we're coming from and why we started to expand so aggressively internationally. I'll skip the introductions to myself since James did that so eloquently. So going forward a bit, our journey started in 2015, in December 2015. And when we started our business as 4 Swedish founders, the idea was that, hey, we wanted to see if we can spread our wings and are able to fly on an international stage when it comes to starting companies. I started the company with 3 other co-founders. We have 10 different companies under the belt, 1 or 2 exits, 1 decent, 1 so-so. But a good understanding of what it is to build a successful company, particularly bootstrap. But we wanted to move to Silicon Valley. So for us, the true journey started 1st of January 2016. I'm assuming a lot of people here know what Y Combinator is about. It's the world's best accelerator. They have launched companies like Airbnb, Brex, Podium, Segment, etc. And of course, it's a fantastic way to get going. And for us, fantastic journey to understand the US market and getting that on speed introduction to how business works in Silicon Valley. But again, this was almost 8 years ago now this happened. So I'll take you a little bit on a story of how we pitched. So when we went to YC and got accepted to YC, I think it's important. We wanted to help all the salespeople. And our pitch said, there's 20 million salespeople in the world, and we charge them $45 per user per month. But we wanted to help them to build a platform where every single B2B deal is happening in a natural way. And that is the digital sales from software category that we are playing in at the moment, which we founded and started approximately 2 years ago. So we finally found our home. So a lot of challenges along the road. I'm happy to speak to about competing in different categories, how to sell in different categories, but that's not the topic of today. As part of this journey, we started immediately in December, started YC. We went from 0 to 200,000 in ARR from us 4 founders sitting in a second bedroom, which was my bedroom in Sunnyvale in Silicon Valley. We also realized to be able to launch our business and to be able, and the target was to raise seed funding and then consequently go through the Series A funding and Series B funding where we are today. But to do that, we needed to compete and make sure that we were ready for the demo day when you pitch and score essentially your first funding. To be able to achieve that, it was quite stressful, of course. So we invested. I wanted to share one thing. They're actually in the room here next door still, but we bought these lights that were photography lights to keep daylight during nighttime. So we could actually utilize cold calling and selling, not just during US time to US companies, but also sit during nighttime at 3 a.m. consecutively for these 90 days to actually sell and cold call towards the European market, and particularly the Swedish market where we had a network since before. There's also a picture on the right that you can see. That's the second bedroom with the full of the post-it notes. We had HubSpot CRM at the time, but we posted post-it notes for the deals we closed. But this led to kind of the opportunity for us to continue to scale. And our strategy that we pitched to investors was a growth strategy based on expanding globally. So we raised the seed funding immediately after YC, which led us quite soon as well to get the core metrics correct to be able to raise a Series A funding. And the pitch was simple. We wanted to scale both in Europe, in different countries and different geos, outside of the US and outside of Sweden. So the plan quickly became to launch different countries. And to give a little bit introduction what those countries were, when we started scaling, we're in the US and Sweden at the moment. We went from launching that with approximately 25 employees during the seed funding to become 75 employees in 6 months in 7 different countries at once. Would we redo it in this exact way if we redid it today? Obviously not. That was a tough cookie for us to crack in that sense. And I wanted to share a little bit about the do's and don'ts from this journey, scaling in these 7 different countries, of what we've learned, of what you should do and what you definitely should not do. So the do's and don'ts. So what are those ones? I want this to be tangible. Hopefully people here are thinking, oh, we're thinking of going into France, or we're thinking about going into the Scandinavian countries, or UK if you're coming from the US, or the Holy Land. I think for all startup is to crack product market fit and growth in the US. So we'll cover a little bit of a different perspective from these different geos that we've expanded into. So step 1, where to go. And I think this is a really important place to start. So when it comes to which markets to choose to scale on, from our perspective, we looked at similar markets. So if you're Swedish, for example, it's quite naturally that you look to Denmark, you look to Norway, you look to Finland, you maybe look to Holland, similar size countries with similar cultures and similar possibilities. One part to evaluate is, of course, to look, do you have an inbound workflow or inbound volume coming from different regions that are stronger? Do you actually have product market fit there? So I would always recommend people to evaluate this remotely, particularly today when you can sell from anywhere. I think it's really, really important. Can we actually sell to them? Is the product sellable in that market? How much tweaks do we need to do to the markets to actually sell? And also the other part, which I think is really important, is understanding which of the partner companies or companies that we do know of have expanded into this geo, and really sit down with them and listen to the do's and don'ts from their perspective, so to really understand what challenges you may approach. The other part that I think is really, really key is when you're expanding to the US. So we're looking at the don'ts on the right-hand section, ignoring time zones, so East versus West Coast in the US, for example. It's really, really important. We started out in San Francisco, so naturally we had a 9-hour time difference. It's really, really difficult to run the business, to get the teams to work cross borders, to have learning happening between your Cs and AEs, AMs, CSMs, and SDRs, but actually aligning them. So I would always recommend, if you're going from Europe into US, look at the East Coast as the first alternative. The other thing that I think is extremely important to think about is the cost of entry. I just had a conversation with my co-founder and our CEO, Samir, and we talked about the cost of entry, because I asked him about some feedback, and he said one thing: always think about your cost that you think you're going to invest and multiply it by pi. So meaning you're probably going to 3x your investment over time than you actually budgeted for. So it's going to cost a lot of money. So you have to really think, do we truly believe in this expansion? Do we truly believe in this geo? So making sure that, particularly in days like these, when capital is not easily accessible, is it worth it? And the other side is product adaptation. So I think focus is probably the most important thing that companies and SaaS companies can have today, because again, growth is harder today. It's an economic downturn that are impacting our win rates. We have more scarce resources to put into different industries, to different ICPs and so forth. So it's super important to understand, are this region going to pull us in a different direction than that focus? Then it's probably a bad idea to go into that country. Step number 2 that I wanted to talk about is a little bit of how do you get started with expanding into a new region. And I think the key here when it comes to the do's is hiring, clicking a bit quick here, but the do's here, hire an entrepreneurial team. It's extremely important that the first people have the get shit done mentality, like we talk about in Get Accept, because at the end of the day, expanding into a new geo is really, really difficult. You're going to struggle a lot more than you probably think. So do you actually have people with you that is going to set a strong culture of being doers and overcoming hardship and hard situations? So on top of that, I think it's really important to send someone as a founder or senior sales personnel of some sort into that country to get everything started, whether that's a 3 to 6 month period, not the most important part, but having someone there who knows what success looks like in your company, who can help to set the culture, is really, really key to get those first crucial 3 to 6 months and getting on your way. When it comes to the don'ts, again, not moving key people. An easy way to not increase your cost, of course, is maybe taking one of your reps that's been with you, a senior AE, a senior CSM, that has been with you for 2 to 3 years, that maybe you have a hard time retaining if you don't give them new challenges. Obviously, a good opportunity to maybe bank a little bit more on them and invest in them to get them over, so you actually know that you have salespeople outselling in that new geo that you can evaluate because you have a historical performance on them that you can compare it with. Not saying that it will most probably be more difficult, of course, selling in that new geo, just based on brand awareness, understanding of the market, understanding of the companies that are in there. The second point that I think is really, really important, a lot of people miss out on piggybacking on strong partners. And I think this is also a good way of evaluating which market to expand to is, do we have any strong partners in that region? Have they expanded in there successfully? So is there someone who have a track record in your space, expanding there, and then trying to establish good collaboration? And these partnerships can look differently from market to market. So from our perspective, the French partners are a little bit different from the partners that we find in the US or the UK, for example. But again, choosing strategic partners, making sure that you piggyback riding with those partners on their expansion, hopefully someone who's a little bit ahead of you when it comes to that expansion into that region. One big subject that I spoke about, this subject about hiring salespeople in new regions a couple of months ago at the conference. And I think this is a really, really tough topic and one of the most important things that you're doing. So when it comes to hiring in a new geo, make sure that you hire someone with outbound pedigree, someone who has a proven track record to create their own pipeline, close out outbound deals. Because the case is, you don't have marketing support, you don't have brand awareness, and you have to create everything from scratch usually, if you don't have a little bit of that organic inbound previously from that. But it's extremely important. I've never seen it succeed if you don't really hire for outbound pedigree in your hiring process. You also want to hire someone in that first team that have some leadership potential. So usually it's a time limit to people who move over to set things up. So who do you bank on to make sure that the expansion can continue? So finding someone who has leadership capabilities or potential to step into some type of country manager, team lead role, sales director for that region. And third, on hiring, you really, really need people. Again, it's super hard to expand into new geos. It's going to be a tough journey. You want people that are resilient and tenacious. It's a must-have that they don't give up, because they're going to hit a lot more hurdles than your salespeople, for example, in your home market. I've only heard about this one. So about the don'ts when it comes to hiring, don't go with that senior illustrious VP of sales or senior sales hire as the first hire. Because the thing is, you want people who are boots on the ground, that are doers. So it's going to be very costly. I've only heard from one other founder or CRO who've successfully hired a VP of sales as the first hire in a new region. The other thing as well, don't be too cautious in the sense of your investment. If you're not willing to hire more than one person, it's going to be difficult to set a culture. It's going to be difficult to get that natural competition going between the team locally. So ensure that you don't do like we did, which was hiring one person in one region based on just, let's start that way. I don't think that's a successful way of getting people engaged and building that culture, which ultimately will also have people stay when the going gets tough. The other thing, we expanded into France. So don't underestimate language challenges that you will have. So for example, I've been trying to join meetings with key clients and large companies in France. But the thing is, even if you speak to someone like an Ernst & Young or a very large tech company for that matter in France, you're always going to stumble into a certain countries that people don't like to speak English, for example. And it's also going to be really difficult to train and give feedback on people. So can you efficiently run a feedback loop and enablement on those people in those regions? Language becomes a key component of that. And some countries are significantly more challenging than others.
Hi, Carl.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to let you know, we're just overrunning a bit. We've got about a minute left.
Yeah, 1 minute left. That's perfect. That's great. So the one thing I have, this actually the last slide. Thank you, James, for reminding me. And I think when it comes to scaling further, when you've established something, you maybe built your 500,000 million in ARR to begin with, just make sure that you bring them into the same sales methodology, the same enablement resources, and selling in the same way. Again, it's all about focus and getting scalability into that motion. Be very careful with hiring aggressively if you don't have that scalable motion. We did that mistake once in one geo where we had to pull back and then cut the team quite quickly with 50%. We lost a lot of investable money. And it wasn't success. But again, scaling is difficult, but make sure that they align with the sales methodology. And then the last caveat that I have for this, US is a total different ball game. I know Sales Confidence is a UK-based network. A lot of you are probably thinking about the US. When it comes to the US, you have to invest significantly more time, significantly more money, and you have to be significantly more resilient to make a dent into that market. So if that's an ambition that you have, think about it. Make sure you have the stamina into continuing there for the long term, because it is a marathon and not a sprint to enter the US market. That said, that was it from